Hey, good morning. Man, I sure hope you all have had a good week, and if you haven't, I hope you'll feel better and be better after our time together. I kind of wanted some family stuff, and then I'll get into the message. The family stuff I want to start with has to do with the Christmas schedule. So I know that families and changes and services and all that are different at Christmas Eve or Christmas time. So this is kind of what's going on. And the bigger we've become, of course, the more campuses we've had, the more complex this is. And so this is actually posted in all the right places if you want to follow along. But let me basically tell you what's happening. So the 22nd, it's services as normal, okay? So our normal routine on a Sunday morning. And then starting December 23rd, which is Christmas Eve, we're going to have two of our Christmas Eve services here at 5 and 6:30. And then on December 24th, we're having Pleasant View's having their Christmas service at 5. Central Campus is having their Christmas Eve services at 3:30 and 5. And Pelzer's having their Christmas Eve service at 5. Clear? Oh, good. I'm surprised. So that's awesome. And then the Sunday after Christmas, we're only going to do two services here, and then we'll do one in the chapel. The campuses are going to be as normal, but for us, we're going to do a 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock service. I'm going to teach those just to kind of dial things back a bit for that one Sunday of the year. Everybody with me? So that's what's going on, and I hope that you won't show up and no one will be here. That'd be bad. So. Second thing I want to talk about is this card. If you would find it, it's close by to you, I hope. If not, take your neighbors. But whatever it is, I just like for you to have one of these cards in your hand. So here's what's true. This is what's true. Christmas is a time when people who don't know Jesus are actually likely to come. And so what that means is we're going to kind of get intentional this year about a couple of things. Not to grow bigger, but to actually introduce people to the love of Jesus Christ. That's what we're trying to do. And so we've got these cards, and we're going to be using these over the weeks leading up to Christmas and to Christmas Eve. By the way, Christmas Eve, we've been planning. I don't know that we've ever done anything like this Christmas Eve. So I really hope, or Christmas Eve, or Christmas Eve to the square root of 6, whatever it is you want to come, be part of that Christmas Eve. So here's what we're asking you to do. I'm asking you to take it home as a family, maybe to pray about, and just write the names of people that maybe you've asked the last 5 years and they have continued to say no, or whatever. Just people that you'd say, I would just like to begin to pray about whether or not to invite them to come and be part of our Christmas Eve or Christmas Eve services or whatever. Just kind of mark it, write their name and pray about it. Then we're going over the next few weeks, I'm going to challenge you to invite and then to follow up. So that's what this is. I really hope you'll be a part of it. I'll be referring to it in the next couple of weeks. So that's that. Jesus, thank you so much for these beautiful people and this incredible season. And Lord, man, Christmas never gets old. It's always fresh. And Lord, so I pray for all those folks who are kind of heading into Christmas season and all the folks that feel pressure to get things done. Would you just kind of burst through all of that and provide clarity and give joy and praise and just say it's all going to be okay. Let's celebrate Christmas for what it really is. And so, Lord, in the next few moments, I pray that you would be so faithful in hiding me in your cross and that we would find ourselves talking about a transformation that's actually possible in our lives. So in order for that to happen, Lord, we need to focus on you. So have your way in your name. Amen. So here's a question you may be asking. It's one that I've asked. Why in the world are we talking about the Grinch? Because, is this a Tom-centered Christmas? Why are we talking about the Grinch? I mean, this is the season like of baby Jesus, and Mary and Joseph and wise men and shepherds and fruitcake. This is that season, So we're trying something a little different this year at Alive, and we'll see if it works. If it doesn't, we won't do it next year, but we're going to try it this year. And we're going to talk about Christmas, but I want to do it from a little different angle. I almost want to surprise you with Christmas this year. So we could have done Charlie Brown. We could have done Home Alone. We could have done Rudolph or Elf or Dickens or Frosty or Die Hard, all the good Christmas movies. So why are we doing the Grinch? To be honest, I don't even like the Grinch. I don't even like it, and I'm not that wild about Dr. Seuss. The guy creeps me out. I mean, I'm just being totally transparent. I like things that make sense, and when I read Dr. Seuss, I can't put it all together in my mind, and so I get really confused, and I probably wouldn't even know the Grinch story if it wasn't for my children and trying to provide them a fully rounded upbringing. And so, we shared with them the Grinch story, but kids make you do weird things. They do. When our girls were growing up, they were into Barbies, and I know you can judge us. I don't care, but they were into Barbies, and so we did that. We bought the dolls, and then I found out like there's like videos that go with Barbie. If you haven't seen those, you're blessed. Yeah, these are not high quality productions at all. But nonetheless, we would sit there and watch them. I've got hours of Barbie training up here, just to let you know. And then the smart people at like Barbie Inc. or whatever it is, they release soundtracks to the videos. So you can actually put the Barbie music in your car and listen to this. I know I'm blowing your minds. I understand that. Some of you are like on your phone right now. Oh, Christmas. So that actually can happen. So I don't know if this has happened to you, if you have young children, nieces or nephews, but I can remember taking the girls to school one particular morning, and we made it through that wonderful sanctifying experience of the car rider line. And then I dropped the girls off, and I said, wow, you parents know, victory. We got them dropped off. And so now I think, well, I got the rest of the day to go to work. And so I was driving to work, enjoying the morning, just thinking about the day, singing to the radio. Except it wasn't the radio. Here I am, a grown man who was singing to Barbie driving through town. And so the first thing I did is I actually looked to see if any of y'all were watching, because I didn't want to hear it from you people, but I was undone. And so I actually stopped by the police station and turned myself in, because I said, I'm sure what I've done is a crime, but this is kind of this is good for me to confess to this room full of strangers. So now back to the Grinch, because I feel better. Why are we talking about the Grinch? Well, How the Grinch Stole Christmas is actually written by Theodore Geisel, who went by the name Dr. Seuss. And it was published in 1957. Dr. Seuss wrote this book, and he drew the pictures for the book. Now, based on a poll done by the National Education Association, How the Grinch Stole Christmas is actually named one of the teacher's top 100 books for children. And the book's been adapted for TV and for movies. And so it was 1966, Boris Karloff starred in the animated film, 2000, Jim Carrey, and then the most recent is Benedict Cumberbatch, who starred in a computer animated film of that same book. Now, if you've never seen the movie or read the book, the basic plot features the Grinch, who is a bitter, grouchy, cave-dwelling creature with chronic bad hair. That's basically who the Grinch is. He lives on Mount Crumpet, and he hates Christmas. The reason he specifically hates Christmas is he hates the commercialization of Christmas. So he preys on this small village of Whoville by launching into this plan to steal all the presents and all the trees and lights and food from the good people of Whoville, who had made their preparations to celebrate Christmas. I know I have you on the edge of your seat. If you haven't seen the movie, we're actually showing the movie tonight here in the auditorium, 5:30. You can come and be a part of that and have a good time. I'll let you investigate further on to actually learn what happens. But let me say this. There is this dramatic change that happens in Whoville. When asked about the writing of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Dr. Seuss said this: I got hung up getting the Grinch out of the mess. I got into a situation where I started to sound like a second-rate preacher. Finally, in desperation, without making any statement whatever, I just showed the Grinch and the Who's together at the table and made a pun of the Grinch carving the roast beef. And now, you understand maybe why we're talking about the Grinch that stole Christmas. See, I have a theory for why this story keeps hanging around. In my opinion, it's not exactly literature gold. But the reason it keeps hanging around is because everybody can relate to it. It speaks to this basic human condition that we see not only in those people we love, but we see it in ourselves. Who hasn't sat around a family gathering or perhaps after a moment of conflict and prayed, hoped for heart change? Any of y'all have those discussions when you drove away from your family gathering saying, man, I just wish so-and-so would have a heart change? If you didn't have that conversation, then everyone else who left the family gathering was actually praying and talking about you, hoping that you would have that heart change. I mean, who hasn't just finished some heated discussion with our teen or with our parents or our spouses or our closest friend and said, man, I just wish their heart would change. I just wish they would change. And maybe some of you have actually gone to this degree where you've actually been pretty honest with yourself. And you had this moment in your own lives when you recognize maybe you're not the person that you want to be. And maybe you've understood the futility of actually trying to change everybody else's heart. And so now you like, maybe I ought to look at my own. Maybe you look and say, man, I'm not the most loving person when I respond to my children, especially when I'm in a hurry. Is that the kind of dad I want them to grow up remembering? Is that the kind of mom I want them to know? Or for some of us, maybe you've come to the point, I'm not honest. I got an integrity problem. Or maybe you use your words to hurt other people. Or maybe you'll use your words to run other people into the ground and you say, I'm that person and I don't like that about myself. Maybe you aren't able to communicate your love to somebody. Or how about this? Anybody else find themselves emotionally detached and maybe unengaged with a family and you know they need you but you have nothing to give? Anybody else gone down the path of self-medication that actually resulted in addiction and a whole bunch of other problems? Maybe you filter everything you do and say through the lens of what's good for me. And as a result, your children suffer. Your marriage suffers. People at work suffer because it's all about you. Or maybe some of you, and I know this is true for some of you, you've been slammed by something in this hard, dark, difficult world. And this season you're grieving, diagnosed, broke, lost, confused, alone. And in your honest reflections, you know what you hope for? Change. Maybe even heart change. I've prayed this many times in my life, usually over situations in which I've tried to change everyone around me and changed every circumstance and ultimately realized the only thing I really could change would be me. And so I simply asked God to change my heart. And so that's why we're going to talk about the Grinch all the way through Christmas. Out of all the wise teachings Jesus offered, everything he said, all the stories you know, all the parables he told, they all had the same basic theme. A heart can change. A heart can change. You put that at the top of the page and everything underneath it would fit. A heart can change. Heart change is actually why this church exists. And I know that you would think that would be normal for churches, but unfortunately it's not. But we're pretty serious about protecting this part of who we are. Many years ago, when we started laying down the foundation for what would become Alive, we drew our heart change idea on a napkin. And the heart change idea was this: we want to reach people that are spiritually hungry because they're just like me. Even if you don't believe, we're all hungry for something. Some of us have identified what that is, some of us haven't. And we want to see two things happen in spiritually hungry people's lives. We want to see people develop a personal relationship with Jesus and then find an active role in healthy Christian community. Now that's not just like some agenda, but the belief is, the conviction is, and we've seen this happen on countless occasions. We've now been doing it for 15, 16 years, and so I've had the stories come back where families have done this, and children and teens and the moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas have committed themselves to personal relationship with Jesus and an active role in healthy Christian community. And what it's produced? Heart change. It's produced spiritual transformation. It's not that complicated. This has produced spiritual transformation, and I'll have folks come, like some things, man, Tom, I came to one service, it didn't work. Okay, it didn't work. But then I'll have folks who come, Tom, we've been coming for over a year, and it's changed our marriage. It's changed our family. It's changed the way I feel about myself. It's changed what I do with my life. And then you pile that on to people that have come 5 or 10 or 15 years and think, without this church, we'd be something totally different. Well, it's not just the church. It's actually this message. Conviction is, if individuals and families and suite mates and sports teams and small groups will throw themselves after these two things, heart change happens. I'll give you just one example of what I mean by heart change from the teachings of Jesus. Now, Jesus routinely taught very difficult things, and sometimes people like me will just spout these things off like we're all just supposed to agree. But if a person listened to Jesus and went out and tried to do the things Jesus taught, it would be near impossible. Jesus wasn't making a list that we can all just write down everything he said and then just do those things. But Jesus would teach and he'd show the kind of life that results when heart change has actually happened. I'll give you one example. Jesus said this: if a person slaps you in the face, turn the other cheek so you can get slapped again. Now, just between me and you, that does not sound very bright. In fact, I don't even like this one, to be honest with you. When I get to heaven, Jesus is going to say, I heard you didn't like mine. Yeah, well, that one I really didn't like. I mean, it's kind of tough. I mean, that's kind of awkward. So, boom, go ahead, hit me again. I mean, I'm not sure that makes sense. And Jesus isn't saying that if you follow him, you should be a victim to whoever's having a bad day. He's not speaking about abusive situations or bullies who may need a good rear end warming, if you know what I'm saying. He's actually pointing to something deeper. Jesus is actually asking a question when he says something like this. What he's asking is this: what kind of person would you be if your immediate response wasn't to hit back? Now that one, that's hitting a little closer to home. Fair? That's making a little more sense to me. What if I didn't just try to force my power on someone who's trying to force their power on me? That's natural. What if I didn't allow my anger to win and hit back physically, or hit back with my words, or hit back with my emotions? Not like Sunday go to meeting Tom, but like Monday Tom and Tuesday Tom. And you'd say, Tom, I'm not sure that's possible. And I agree. Don't get mad at me. I mean, this is Jesus' idea. I'm just kind of sharing, what he's talking about, and send him an email. I don't know. But I'll give you an example of where I really failed miserably in my life. And so if it's important to you to have a pastor on a pedestal, you should tune out now. Go to Facebook and just kind of cruise through that for a while, because I'm getting ready to bust any of that pedestal situation that you might have. So a number of years ago, I was driving through town with my family, probably listening to Barbie. Barbie's in Candyland having a great time. Whatever it is. And so, get out of my head. And so I truly have no idea why. I don't have any idea what happened. I was singing to Barbie, thinking about navel lint, and that's kind of what I was doing. I was just driving with the family. And all of a sudden, this truck comes up on the bumper of my truck, and I look in my rearview mirror. Y'all seen the insurance commercial with the guy in the tailgater? That was the situation I was involved in right there. And so I was looking, and this person behind me was like mad. And because I'm incredibly wise, it was apparent they were mad at me for something. Now, I had no idea what. And so, they were pounding on the dash with their fist. I mean, very ungodly people. And so they're kind of doing this moment. In fact, he might have been an axe murderer, just trying to set myself up for the way this resolves. And so he's beating on his dash, and then he starts honking his horn and all this kind of stuff. I mean, my family's oblivious. They're like, Barbie is wonderful. I mean, that's kind of the whole thing going on. I'm like, what is going on right here? And so, you guys, don't leave me alone. I felt this temperature rising, not like in a good 80s rock ballad. I felt it rising in a bad way. And so I felt this temperature rising, and so there was nowhere for me to go, and so I just kind of kept doing my thing. And so once the road went to 2 lanes, this dude whipped his truck around me, raced up beside me, gave me a very friendly greeting with one of his fingers, and then jerked his car in front of my vehicle at such close proximity, I had to hit my brakes. It was horrible. And so I hit my brakes and I slowed down, still having no idea what happened. Well, then this gentleman apparently needed gas right in that moment. And so he pulled into the gas station to a gas pump. So I pulled in, that's a lie. I squealed my tires and whipped my vehicle in to pull in right behind him, threw it into park, got out of the truck, checked for the alive sticker, and then went to the truck that he was in, opened his door, grabbed a hold of him, and jerked him out of the truck and pushed him against the side of his vehicle. Turned the other cheek, not today. First words out of my mouth were, "You're just a little fella." Because he was. I'd like to tell you it was like Arnold Schwarzenegger. It wasn't. I mean, he's just a little fella. And so it's at this point, I had a conversation with him about how I thought he was driving inappropriately, and asked him if he knew the latest Barbie song. I mean, we had a good conversation about this, but I did say to him, I said, I would recommend you use a bit more caution about how you drive and who you might tick off, because the next guy may not be the pastor of Canada Memorial Baptist Church. I mean, I wish I could tell you I walked away at this point, but I didn't, because I still had a head full of steam. And so I looked in the car and there was a girl. I invited her to church, and then I encouraged her to actually find a man instead of a boy that she should maybe hang out with for a while and maybe use a bit more sense before next time she decides to go out on the town. Got back in my car, drove away, and felt like an idiot. Now, I don't know. I mean, if you're here, I should apologize to you, and I do now. I still don't know if I was right or wrong. I really don't. You all figure that out and determine it. I hope I justify it by saying, I'm sure I protected him from getting his butt kicked down the road, because I have no doubt the fear of God entered into his body that day. Now, not my best moment as a pastor, but I was a dad, feared for the safety of my family, and I was a jerk. So this whole turn the other cheek thing, it's not my best class. Jesus says hard stuff. It's easy for me to turn the other cheek when I'm not ticked off. Jesus says very difficult things. Right after the whole turn the other cheek thing, Jesus says these words. If you're sued in court and your shirt is taken from you, give your coat. Pause. Now, I hope and trust that many of you are not being sued. But can you imagine hearing the news that so-and-so was sued, lost, paid what they had to pay, and then some? Because that's exactly what Jesus is saying. If you're sued and they take your shirt, give them your coat. Who wants to follow him now? It gets even more. So this one really requires a little bit of context. So this is being done at a time when it's Roman occupation. So they were uninvited guests, the Romans were. Nobody liked the Romans. I mean, it was a military hostile takeover. And it was common practice for Roman soldiers to find Jewish people to carry their armor and their swords and AK-47s for them so they wouldn't have to carry it. And so Jesus says to that group of people, turn the other cheek. If you get sued for your shirt, give them your coat. And if one of those guys asks you to carry their stuff or for a mile, carry it too. And then he says, give to those who ask. Don't turn away from those who want to borrow. I hope you can imagine how people felt about what Jesus was saying. And maybe you can understand how you might feel. I mean, it's rapid fire. 3 situations that I'm pretty sure I would fail miserably, actually 4. Turn the other cheek. If you're sued for something, ask to help in something, ask to give something, go above and beyond. Well, here's the thing. Jesus isn't trying to make a list for everybody here to obey. That's not it. That's not what he's doing. He isn't giving us a to-do list to check off to make sure we're holy. So what's he up to? What's the win? To be honest, I really would like to stand before you and say, I desire to be that man. I'd like to say that. I'd like to say, I want to be the person Jesus describes in these verses. This is who Jesus is, but it's not who I am. Can I say that? I'm the jerk that throws another jerk up against their car. I'm the husband who can shut down his emotional investment in his marriage in a second. I'm the parent who responds in anger when I don't understand my children and what they need. I'm the person who can get so swallowed up in fear and doubt in circumstances that I can't control that it throws me off my entire game. And I suspect I'm not alone, right? You know what Jesus is doing? He's saying there's actually hope for me, and there's hope for you. Because Jesus is in this business of changing hearts. And he can change mine. And he can change yours. And when our hearts change, so do our lives. We find ourselves living differently because we are different. It's not something put on. It's not pretend. We're different. Jesus taught we're actually changing. I think maybe in modern church world, we've forgotten how the Bible describes the change that takes place. Two primary phrases the Bible uses. First phrase is this. The Bible says, when our hearts change, we become a new creation. So in other words, Jesus isn't putting lipstick on a pig here, but we're actually a new creation, a kind of a brand new car-smelling creation. So when we interact with Jesus and he comes into our lives in a personal relationship, it's not still the old Tom, but there's something new taking place. And then Billy Graham made the other phrase popular, but Jesus actually wrote it. When he said, you can be born again. It's like a do-over. It's like a mulligan. You can be born new. See, modern Christian world, we're all trying to pretend that we're all so good already, but we're not. We're all jacked up. If we were so good, culture wouldn't be in the mess it's in. Our lives wouldn't be wrecked like they are. Fair? Come on, let's have a moment of honesty here. So maybe we could pause and say, I suck at this. Probably shouldn't have said that. I stink at that, whatever word. But can't we at least pause and say, I need to be a new creation. I need to be born again. Christians actually are different people than we were before we said yes to Jesus. We're now part of God's kingdom here on earth and our blessed future of God's kingdom forever. So when he says turn the other cheek, you do it because he's made you new. When he says that someone sues you and wins, give him more, you do it because your heart's brand spanking new. It's not the old heart. When he says when someone forces you to do something, do more, it's not because all of a sudden like you've got your life all together and everything's calm and you're well medicated so you can do that. It's because your heart's different and you want to. And that's what Jesus taught. Not to live these sanitized pretend lives, but to live authentic lives of hearts that have been changed. Not because I've got control of my emotions. Not because I've buffered my life and so I'm not in circumstances where I don't lose whatever. But because our hearts are changed. So there's this couple named Mary and Joseph. And through these miraculous circumstances, Mary conceives a child of the Holy Spirit. And her story is filled with dreams and visions and the fulfillment of prophecies of old. She delivers this child in a stable the most humbling of beginnings. There were these shepherds who saw this angel choir thing, and they said you should go see the baby, so they actually went to see the baby. And then apparently there were these wise men who saw a weird star, and they decided to follow that star, and they end up seeing this baby. There's a whacked out king who heard in that time that there was a new king who was born, so he went out to try to kill the baby Jesus, and so Jesus and mom and dad had to leave their homeland and flee to Egypt. So this baby, this Jesus we celebrate during this season, he's the reason that change is actually possible. His sacrifice is the reason change is a possibility, and that all started, well, at least we celebrated it at Christmas. And this change was actually predicted thousands of years before Jesus was born. We have the priceless gift of prophecy in Scripture. This particular piece of prophecy was written during a time when Israel was on the edge of being invaded and taken control of by the Assyrian army. It was a dark day. Everybody was scared to death. The Assyrians were on a warpath, and everywhere they went was death and destruction left behind them. And here they are getting ready to power into Israel. The future's uncertain. And into this moment, when everybody's scared to death, Isaiah comes up with this prophecy. Listen for the words of change. The people who walk in darkness will see a great light. Did you see it? Oh, that's how I turn the other cheek. Oh, that's how I give someone more if they win an argument against me. He goes on, for those who live in a land of deep darkness, a light will shine. You will enlarge the nation of Israel. And even though right now its people are scared to death, its people will ultimately rejoice. They will rejoice before you as a people rejoice at the harvest. And it's hard to understand, but that's basically like the happiest time of year. And then he says, here's why. A child is going to be born. Now you all know who the child is, but they didn't. The child's going to be born. The son's going to be given to us. And the government will rest on his shoulders, and he will be called. Now pay attention here, because these names matter. He'll be called Wonderful Counselor. Anybody need that in their lives, in their heart change areas? Mighty God. Anybody need a little God strength in your life? Heart change area. Everlasting Father. You think that whatever's going on wins? No, it's just a day. But there's a Father who hasn't changed at all. There's a Father who will see us through invasions and through withdrawals, through cancer and through healing, through remission, through death and loss, through financial struggles, marriage strife, children rebelling. We have this everlasting Father. And he's the Prince of Peace. And I'm so glad that last one's there, because in the midst of my heart being changed, apparently we can have peace. What caused the change in these dire circumstances? What caused Isaiah to prophesy these words? Not only of personal transformation, but he's actually prophesying of national transformation. What caused it? What produced the hope for generations to come? The exact same thing that provides those things for me and for you. Matthew chapter 1. And she will have a son, And you're to name him Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. You want some change? Get a hold of that one. Come on. All of this occurred to fulfill the Lord's message through his prophet. And now you know a little bit of what we're talking about. Then verse 23 says this, look, the virgin will conceive a child, and she will give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. So Tom, the next time somebody rides your bumper, I've gotten better since that number of years ago, but don't, hope that's not Tom. Don't. Apparently God is with me, and my heart is changing. And I need that. Respectfully, you need that. You're good people. But no matter how good we are, we can't change our own hearts. And so all of this leads to one ginormous question. Do you want to change? And that's it. Through all the busyness and amazingness of what is Christmas, the only question you have to answer is, do you want to change? And do they? Do the people I asked you to think about inviting, do they want to change? Do they need to change? So all of our campus today are closing the same song. You guys can come if you're anywhere around here, but you're welcome to come. So, the reason I wanted to do this song is because it speaks to the whole message of change through all of Christendom. It's an amazing, powerful song. It's called King of Kings. Let me just share with you the first part here. It says this, in the darkness we were waiting without hope and without light. And it occurs to me, that could be some of you. You're kind of in this moment right now. For some reason you ended up at this service, but maybe your life is such that it's without hope and it's without light. Till from heaven you came running. I love that line. It wasn't like God sauntered his way to earth. But from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes to fulfill the law and prophets. And then to a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. And then the chorus is just praise. So praise the Father and praise the Son and praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory and majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. So here's what I want to invite you to do. Would you just stand with me, just real quick, if you would? Here's what I want us to do. So I know some of this is going to be new for you, and that's fine. Just sing whatever's on your heart if you want to sing. If you don't want to sing, enjoy them singing. It doesn't matter. Just pay attention to heart messages. And as the song's being sung, as it's being lifted up, ask yourself, do you want to change? And if you have experienced the change, then get on your praise. Get on your praise. It's that season. Lord, thank you for these good folks. Now, Lord, I pray that you would allow the message to settle deep within our hearts. Let this team lead us in a spirit-anointed way so that we might give you the greatest amount of glory possible. And all God's people said, amen.